Сайн байцгаана уу хүн төлөвчтэй. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Австрали улсаас Монгол улсад суугаа онц бөгөөд бүрэн ирэхэд Элчин сайд ноён Жон Лангтри оролцож байна.
Жон Лангтри Австрали улсаас Монгол улсад суугаа Элчин сайд. Тэрээр гадаад хэрэг худалдааны яамд урт хугацаанд ажиллаж буй ахлах мэргэжлийн ажилтан бөгөөд 2013-аас 2015 оны хооронд зүүн хойд Азийн асуудал хариуцсан хилцээний даргаар ажиллаж байсан. Ноён Langtry өмнө нь Берлин дахь Австрали улсын элчин сайдын яамны элчин зөвлөх, Хонконг дахь Австрали улсын ерөнхий консулын газарт дэд консул, Токио дахь Австрали улсын элчин сайдын яамны 1-р нарийн бичгийн дарга, мөн Бээжин дахь Австрали улсын элчин сайдын яамны 2-р нарийн бичгийн даргаар тус гадаад орнуудад ажиллаж байсан туршлагатай.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jargash.
You are the first residence ambassador of Australia to Mongolia. And having this time frame of diplomatic relations, it happens relatively late. Why?
Well, we've always had a strong relationship to build on. This is the 45th anniversary of diplomatic relations. And I guess it was time. It's time because we have a strong economic, political and strategic relationship. And it's also a time because I think with the way the economy in Mongolia is growing, that we have some strong economic interests to look after here.
Okay. So how do you find your job as ambassador in Mongolia for a while?
Well, Mongolia is a very easy place for Australians to get used to. I think we love a lot of the same things. For me, I love the open spaces, I love the blue skies, I love the relaxed and very inclusive society you have in Mongolia.
Inclusive?
Inclusive, yes. It's very easy for Australians to come here and feel at home with the society and the political system.
In terms of how you grew up, landscape, nature-wise, any similarity?
Of course. I just mentioned the wide open spaces. Both of us have a huge land mass and the populations are concentrated in the bigger cities, both in Mongolia and Australia. So there's a great love of the countryside, and also there's a common nomadic tradition. So yeah, yep. It's an easy place to come.
You said that most of people live in urban areas, less people in the countryside, and people mostly who would like to migrate to the urban areas. The same is happening here. What was the key that you still keep people in countryside?
Still keeps people in the countryside? Yes. Well, I think first of all it's best to say what keeps them in the big cities, and I think that's water in Australia. Wide open spaces, but like Mongolia, don't have an awful lot of water. And so our cities have tended to grow up along the coast. But what keeps people in the countryside? Well, agriculture and mining.
So in Mongolia, we need to keep also people in the countryside, yes. Agriculture and mining. So we will talk, of course, a lot about mining, but in terms of agriculture, please describe why and how competitive is your agriculture, what is the main cultures there?
Well, we have become good at large-scale animal husbandry and cropping in dry climates, and the feature of that has been having grown up as a business which has investment that doesn't rely just on what happens with nature. So we are one of the most successful agricultural exporters in the world.
Well, the question is how? I mean, is it because land owned by the people, or because people use technology? Obviously, not so many people out there. And what I mean, I'm trying to figure out for Mongolian herdsmen how they can be competitive.
I guess the difference is this. In Australia, we have invested in large-scale animal husbandry and cropping. in a way that hasn't been possible so far in Mongolia with your traditional herding traditions.
So we call also it's farming.
Farming, yes.
Kind of. And one person or a family running big amount of animal husbandries, right? Herds of animals on a large territory, yet the land is dry. So how does it work there?
Well, investment involves also laying in, for instance, with animal husbandry, supplies of fodder, feed for the times when nature can't provide. So in Mongolia, for instance, you have the dzud. I guess the Australian equivalent of that is drought. And sometimes, well, just about always in some part of Australia, there will be droughts that can last for years with no rain falling. And so the question is, how do you invest in large-scale agriculture in such a way that you can cope with the natural variations in nature?
So obviously that herdsman cannot invest himself. So what is the relations with the state? I mean, who is investing actually? Who is the working on, who takes care of the return on that investment?
There is domestic investment and foreign investment as well.
Okay.
Some of the land holdings for farming are very, very extensive. Could be the size, well, literally thousands of square kilometres.
So they can have a cooperation with a foreign investor, a private company.
Yes, there is foreign investment and always has been in Australian agriculture.
And who owns the land? The land is owned by whom? The foreigner, or?
It could be.
Could be.
It could be. It could be leased. There are a number of different arrangements. But this goes back to the days when Australia was a colony of the United Kingdom. The development of agriculture, be it wool, be it beef, be it grains, has always featured a substantial amount of investment, foreign investment of one sort or another.
What is the, other than mining again, main export items from agriculture in Australia?
Well, we're one of the world's biggest wheat exporters, but also particularly things like beef, wool.
You are the world's largest wheat exporter.
One of them.
One of them, and beef as well.
Beef, yes.
And there is a particular relations with Japanese who also have beef kind of stocks in Australia. What is the relationship now? There was a certain times where there was a bit in tension.
Oh, there are always waves of foreign investment in Australia of one sort or another. You go back to our colonial history from Britain, from the United States, from Japan, more recently from China. And I guess it would be fair to say that in any country, foreign investment can be greeted with some skepticism. But I guess as people get used to seeing good quality foreign investment delivering benefits for the country, that they become more relaxed about it. I guess that people have become very comfortable with Japanese investment in Australia. It's one of our largest foreign investors, and they've tended to take minority shares as a guarantee of supply security, and have been very responsible and productive investors. And so there's a good deal of confidence in Japanese investment.
Okay, let's talk now about mining, which is another big similarity of two countries. But there's big differences in terms of policy, efficiency, the result of all this investment in mining. So let's talk first. Who owns mine? How much the state owns mines in Australia?
Well, the state doesn't own mines in Australia.
Okay.
We have concluded that the best way to generate the best national income from our mineral resources is to attract good quality foreign investment and to make sure there's a good return from the public through employment, infrastructure, and also taxation and royalties.
So all mines owned by private companies?
Basically, yes.
Basically. And what is the role of the state? Giving licenses, or what? How extending licenses? What is the a participation of the state in the mining industry?
The state regulates the investment to make sure that it's in the national interest and also that it contributes to the national wealth, and it can do so through employment, it can do so through infrastructure building, it can also do so of course through taxation and royalties.
So you said infrastructure. Who is investing in infrastructure then?
Generally it is the foreign investor, but in some cases where there is a broader use for the infrastructure, particularly the state governments in Australia. Not so much the national government, but the state governments may build some of the infrastructure.
So say Perth in the southwest, in the north other mining deposits, so many railways coming to the port. Who owns those railways?
They're owned by the mining companies.
Mining companies?
Yes.
Who owns which one is owned by this state, local state?
I'm not aware of any state government rail up in the northwest, the iron ore province in Western Australia.
See, my concern is infrastructure as such, kind of to be used by other companies as well as infrastructure. How do you regulate? The mining company who owns the infrastructure would allow other companies, mining or not mining companies, to use their railway infrastructure.
The state and federal governments have an interest in that, and we certainly encourage sensible sharing of resources. It's usually possible for a commercial arrangement to be reached that suits all parties.
Okay, so it is not completely closed.
No.
So upon agreement, they can use, any other company can use a company's infrastructure.
There are a range of such deals that have been done between mining companies around Australia.
Okay. Now, you said the state regulates mines to make sure that it is national interests. Say a Chinese company is coming, well, there was cases, buying several other mines and infrastructure. If there were any such cases, and would you allow Chinese companies control? If there were any cases where you had disputes or where you had special consideration, in particular you had an agency before?
There are very few cases where mining investments from any country have been refused. Very, very few. And so China is no exception to that. There is a body called the Foreign Investment Review Board, which looks at foreign investments over a certain level, and if there is concern that the investment could unduly distort the market or something like that, or if there are national security concerns, then there's a discussion with the foreign investor, and usually a mutually agreeable arrangement is reached and the investment is approved.
If there was a particular cases where you found their national interests are at stake, and consequently you have made decisions related to that foreign investment.
There have been a number over the years. There was a proposed investment, well, basically 100% buyout of Woodside, one of our largest gas producers, proposed by a Dutch company. This is quite some years ago, which was refused. There was a proposal by Singapore, for example, to buy the Australian Stock Exchange, which is a private company, and that was refused. There was also, more recently, a proposal by an American company to buy a major grain distributor in Australia that was also refused on national interest grounds, basically to do with concerns over dominance of the market. With respect to China, I think there have been conditions placed on one of their proposed investments to do with national security. I think it was part of the mine tenement was overlapping with our military test range, and that was agreed perfectly amicably with the Chinese investor. No particular problem there. They understood.
Okay. Yep. Ambassador, you are the largest supplier of coal, at certain times largest of coal, coking coal to China. And what makes I mean, though you are so far from China, how you can be competitive in the east coast of China with other countries being so far?
It's quality and efficiency.
Okay, in terms of quality, is it all your coal washed coal?
Yes.
And if you take the cost structure, transport is half or?
Look, I'd have to go and do the homework on the exact costs, but basically we are an international competitor in the coking coal market. We also supply a lot of coking coal to Japan and to Korea and to Taiwan, so we're a global trader.
When you say we, there are many companies who are doing that from
Yes.
different parts of Australia, right?
Mhm.
I understand they all bring to one port by railroads mostly, and from one port in the northeast.
No, there are a range of ports, there are a range of mines, there are a range of ways of delivering the coal.
Okay, to put on the board of a ship, right?
Yes, it has to be
Vessels.
shipped.
And how do you see that? You see the value chain. You coking coal just after wash, it will go only to metallurgy, right? It will go to smelter. Do you see in Australia? Do you want to create a whole value chain all together until the end? Making metals there, steel there. Why you would not?
Well, it comes down to the size of your domestic market in the end. And yes, during the Second World War, we developed quite a range of heavy industry, including iron steel making. And we're still making a little bit of steel, but basically we found that our domestic market is pretty small, and its labour costs have been fairly high. And the return we get from the really large investment you need to make in that sort of industrial plant is not really warranted. We're better off concentrating on what we're really competitive at, and that is exporting natural resources efficiently.
Total market is how many? What is the total market of Australia?
Well, our population, we have a population of 23 million people.
23, so even less than Canada.
That's right.
So,
And we're not next to the United States. Everything we export, we have to ship. And so, if you think about it, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to subsidise a very small domestic market by exports.
so this economic structure, or diversification also we call it, is dictated by the market, not by the emotions or the patriotic feelings.
Well, particularly if you have a small domestic market, after a time you become actually financially unable to continue to subsidise domestic industries.
True.
And that's what we've found, and we've gradually moved out of the heavier manufacturing. In fact, nearly 80% of our economy these days is services.
Services,
Yes,
in
that's right.
particular, a lot big.
And that's normal in a developed economy.
In terms of, just last question on mining, to have the local people happy, or not making a riot against foreign direct investors. I understand you have very proper right shares of royalties division, sharing with the local areas. How does it work?
Well, there's a lot you can learn from Australia's experience, both positive and negative, I'll be honest with you. I think it would be best to say in Australia that our mining and our royalty regimes are still a work in progress. Some things we've got right, some things we've got less right, and also, of course, the international market changes from time to time, and you need to have a look. You always need to be looking at making sure that you have your tax and royalty regimes right in a way that the public understands that the country and its citizens are getting a fair return on the investment in what is, after all, our mineral resources.
That's our concern here in Mongolia, because the shares belong to local community is not coming there. As a result, locals try to find their own ways of taking somehow a pie of the work projects there. That it was a result we have some conflicts. That's very unfortunate. Now let's go back to mining, but still to Mongolia. Australia is an important player in the mining sector of Mongolia. Please describe this up to date.
Well, the most evident face of Australia's commitment to Mongolia's mining development is Rio Tinto's involvement in Oyu Tolgoi. But there are also a number of other Australian miners out there involved in exploration, and ultimately I'm sure they'll also be involved in the development of mines.
How do you see OT now, today? Things go as you think it should go, or are there any other concern?
Well, we're pleased to see that good progress is being made on stage 2 of the development. I think this is a very big project which will make a major contribution to Mongolia's economic health and growth, and we're pleased as Australian ambassador, I'm very pleased to see that a good quality company like Rio Tinto is centrally involved in OT's development.
Not only they are kind of establishing new standards of mining, by all means, in all the part of value chains in the country. How do you see that local, the Rio Tinto relations, if I may say that, through Oyu Tolgoi, with local areas? What's going on there? How does it make the local life thriving, if any?
Well, Rio Tinto is an Australian multinational and has been involved in mining projects all over the world. And I've known the company through my work for quite a long time, and what I personally have seen is that they have a real commitment to local economic and social development, as well as making a contribution to the national wealth. And so since I've come here, I've been impressed with the way that they are focusing on local employment, local procurement, local content, and also environmental protection, and also training and safety.
You said local procurement.
Yes.
We talk about then the local population capacity of supplying. What kind of products? If they don't have right now those products, they can, or services, they can create it now. So what kind of things are happening, since you have been traveling several times to the sites and you have been meeting local Mongolian communities, several new NGOs initiated there? How do you find so far?
Well, I think it's very important when you have from our own experience, when you have a huge mining project like this, that the local communities understand that they shouldn't be solely dependent on the mine, but they should rightly expect that there will be sustainable economic and social development.
Yeah, in particular terms, do you have a particular project in mind that you see things keep moving to that direction?
What I would like to do in partnership, not just with Rio Tinto's involvement in OT, but also with the other Australian mining companies, is to look at how we can work with other donors, aid donors, both bilateral donors and also the UN system, but also with NGOs and indeed with local governments, to bring some new partners into the corporate social responsibility projects that the mining companies are proceeding with. So for instance, if a company is investing in a local hospital, or is investing in local agriculture, we'd like to make sure that partners other than the company can come in and help to develop the whole value chain in a way that leaves the community with looking outwards for its economic development as well as just towards the mine. The reason for that is that Australia's own experience with building mines in remote areas is that they're very, very capital intensive, and so there is a very intensive labour input when you're building the mine to get it built as quickly as possible. But when it is built, you have to be internationally competitive, and typically the mines operate with a much lower labour force. So it's very important that you look beyond just the mine to at how you can also develop a viable, sustainable local enterprise, particularly in areas like agriculture.
I understand. However, Mongolians, based on their experiences of Erdenet, the joint venture with Russia, which created the city Erdenet at the mine, Mongolians are considering or wondering why Rio would not make a city at the site. What is your position on that?
Well, I think whether or not you build a city at a new mine site is really a question for Mongolia and Mongolians. But I can talk a bit about our own experience. And there has never, ever in Australia been a case where a really big city of the likes of Erdenet has grown up sustainably in and around a mining project in a remote area. And there are a few reasons for this. One of them is the one that I just mentioned. You'll have a high period of high labour workforce when you're building it, but not when you're operating it.
Yes.
But secondly, a lot of it has to do with the environment and just remoteness.
Yeah,
so there are infrastructure costs, but also things in Australia as simple as water supply.
Water supply.
Yeah.
And the government of Mongolia recently made their decisions to make smelter in Hambogdsom, which is about 20 kilometers away from OT. And
I've been to Hanbogd.
Hanbogd, okay. So they're going to make a smelter plant, a kind of more concentration of population there in this area, 20 kilometers at least away from the mine site. Is it in the line what we are talking about?
I guess that OT is selling into an international copper market. And you need to have a look at, amongst other things, the smelting capacity that already exists and what the best economic return is. I'm sure that the Mongolian government will want to have a good look at the economic feasibility of building a smelter at Hanbogd. Look, I don't have a comment. I mean, it makes economic sense. It makes economic sense, and I'm confident that the Mongolian government will have a very good look at that.
That's it, yeah. Now, that's also another concern. And also, it's a water issue. So hopefully there was a proper estimation of all these resources, and we will see that down the road.
Well, I mean, so that's really a matter for Mongolia. Our own experience is that you have to look at the environment, you have to look at the water, you have to look at the sustainability of local business, you have to look at the infrastructure, all of these things when making decisions about whether or not you want to increase the size of a city.
Now we are in the middle of the situation where we have agreed at the staff level with the IMF conditions extended program facility, I think. Funded facility, extended fund facility, or extended facilities fund, EFF, right? And now we will make the final decisions, hopefully, at the parliament soon. How do you find the importance of this IMF package of funds?
Well, we're very pleased to have seen such constructive negotiations between the IMF and the Mongolian government on what to do about Mongolia's current economic situation. In particular, we think that the package that is being discussed has the potential to increase investor confidence and also to restructure the economy in a more sustainable way. I think that's all very positive.
Australia has played and been playing an important role in higher education of Mongolia. Please tell us at which level and what is the result so far.
Well, one of the great things for me to discover when I came here as App Master was just what a strong education relationship there is. And of course, many Mongolians know about the Australia Awards postgraduate scholarships that we have been running since 1994. There are probably now, if you count the number of Mongolians studying in Australia under the Australian Awards and the number who've graduated, nearly 500 altogether.
Wow. Impressive.
And it is impressive. They're very active they come back to Mongolia and they're very active often at a quite senior level in all areas of the economy, of politics and civil society.
last question is why you have decided to be a diplomat?
Why have I decided to be a diplomat? Well, at a personal level, I came from, I guess, an international family. My father was in the army, and I travelled a lot all over the world. And in the end, also, although at one stage I did study mechanical engineering, I found that I was much better than at languages and much more interested in working with people in other countries. So here I am.
You have been playing basketball?
No, no.
Why
everyone
would
asks
not?
me.
Why would not?
Well, I can't jump.
I see. Okay. How about children?
I have 2 children. And,
they play basketball. Are they tall as tall as you are?
They're tall, but basketball hasn't been something that the Langtry family has been terribly good at.
Langtry family.
Yes.
Well, Ambassador, very happy to have you as a guest of our program and to share just at the personal level of the look at the relations between 2 countries today after 45 years of diplomatic relations. We are celebrating big anniversary, and I would like to thank you and congratulate you with your position and the job of what you do.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a great pleasure to be on your program, Jargal.
Thank you. Thank you. За үзэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Австрали улсаас Монгол улсад суугаа онц бөгөөд бүрэн эрхэд элчин сайд Жон Лангтри оролцлоо. Их баярлалаа.